Hey guys, welcome back. Hitting your first show with your horse can be an intimidating endeavor. If you're wondering how to tell if your horse is ready, as well as how to prepare them to have the best experience possible, I'm going to answer some of those questions for you, as well as show you how I prepare a horse on their first outing to set them up for success in the future. So I brought a few horses to a smaller show up here in Missouri just to get them out for their first time and to start preparing them for the show season ahead of us. In this video, however, we're going to be focusing on a 4-year-old gelding named Cruz. And be sure to stick around till the end because this doesn't go how you might expect it to for a first show. So how do you know when your horse is ready to go to town? There's no one set standard for how broke your horse has to be. Often it's easy to look at the best competition out there and think, I'm nowhere near close to that, so I need to just stay home and keep training. But I really want to encourage you not to adopt this mindset, because horses do not get show broke at home. I think it's very important to get your horses hauling and riding in new environments as soon as possible. So as soon as I have a decent handle on my horse and he trusts me to kind of hold his hand and walk him through intimidating situations, then I want to start getting him out and taking him to those new environments and making sure that he trusts me in all the new places I might bring him. The more you haul a horse and the more he kind of has this routine where he shows up, you work him a little bit, you get him settled, you get him focused, the faster and faster that process is going to be as you go along. Most trainers haul green horses to several shows before ever taking them into the show arena. You do not have to be finished to show up. You're welcome to come out and ride your horse around, get him used to the environment without having that pressure of trying to show the first time. If you're looking for permission to be included, here it is, I'm giving it to you now. You will fit in, okay? Trust me, every trainer has been in your shoes at some point before with a green horse who's mortally embarrassed them a time or two. Okay, it happens to everyone. This is a very normal process. So bring your horses to a few shows, get those stalls, and just let your horses camp out a few days and get used to the environment, okay? We've all been there. It's part of the process. It's very important for a horse to learn to settle in and learn that there's a routine at shows just like there is at home. So just like I mentioned before, the more you do this and the more your horse learns that routine and he settles in and you train him and you work him, the faster that's going to get every time until coming in and stalling and settling in is no longer such a big mental issue for your horse, and all you have to do is focus on going out there and showing and being successful, okay? But it is very important that you just show up in the first place. Rarely do we take a horse to its first show and actually show them, but Cruz here I feel like is a little bit of an exception. He's doing really, really well in his training. He really adapts to new things very well, and just riding him around here the little bit I have, I'm seeing that he's so settled in his mind. Obviously there's things that he needs to work on and stuff, but he's not just flipping out. There's nothing that's just so overwhelming to him that he can't settle in and focus. And I feel like the next step for him is to get in the arena. I really like this horse. He got started late because of an injury, so he only has about 5 months on him, but he's fairly good-minded, he's really confident, and when he does worry about something, you only have to show it to him a couple times and he adapts to it pretty quickly and moves on, and that's it. So that's a huge positive sign for me, and I think that's going to work well for us. The first day, I just want to get my horse comfortable with the environment that we're showing it. So there's a lot to look at in this arena. It is a just smaller facility, but there's just so much going on. I feel like it's packed into this environment. And we've got the restaurant over here. There's people right behind the glass that are watching the horses. So every time they go past, there's like all these faces and stuff. And it kind of has that weird, transparent but opaque, and the horses are just kind of eyeballing it. So we've got the restaurant there, we've got the people behind the glass, then you have trash cans along the rail, you have bleachers, you have banners, you have the cattle chutes there that smell really funny, so the horses obviously pick up on the sense that there is something else out there. And then right behind the barn is the cattle pens with the cattle and them making noise and stuff, and just so much more. There's a lot going on in this arena. There's the wind screens out in the warm-up arena that are always moving around and clanging against the metal. So the most important thing for me to do right off the bat is to get my horse relaxed and confident in this new environment. The first thing you often lose when you go to a new place is your power steering and your transitions, okay? Because often a horse is stiff and he really has an opinion about where he wants to go or where he doesn't want to go. And he also is kind of a little bit absent-minded, so he's not picking up on her cues like he normally would. But I'm not going to work on those things right off the bat, okay? That's not the most important thing to me. And I've fallen into the trap before of realizing when I got out there, hey, these things are missing, and going right away to drilling on those things and working my horse really hard in an attempt to get him reconnected again. But all it did was kind of bring his anxiety level up and his stress, and it would put me a few steps back, I would say, instead of getting the horse relaxed first and then going back and working on those steps. So don't fall into that same trap, okay? What I really want to do is turn that worry into curiosity, and if I can do that, then I'm going to have a successful show. We're going to set the horse up for success in the future. It might not go perfectly here, but if every time I put the horse in a new environment where he's like stressed and worried about something, and I say, hey, it's okay, buddy, we're going to go check this out together, it's going to be a good time, and I never force him to confront any of those fears right off the bat, it's going to start building that curiosity, and he's going to be much more excited about going places versus feeling like he's going to be trapped and pushed into something that he cannot handle. So that's what we're going to do. I ride him around the rail here, and you can see there's a few spots that he's just really concerned about, especially when there's a lady standing over here, and I wanted to bring him in, and you can see that's Sid there. That's why I'm being a little rude. I'm riding between the rail and that horse, and one of my main rules is that the horse has to go forward when I tell him to go forward. I don't care if it's a step, I don't care if it's a little bit, I don't care where they go when they go forward, but that is a big rule to me, is if I tell you to go forward, you need to go forward. Often people don't reinforce this enough, and their horses end up getting a lot of that sucked back, and they don't take him seriously when they need to take him seriously. So that's kind of a big deal for me, and so I'm going to start pushing him through here on this stretch of the fence that he's pretty worried about. And this is after walking him around the rail numerous times to get him comfortable with that. Now we've got a new obstacle here, so obviously that's going to be a little bit of a change for him. Now, once I have my horse to where he's really relaxed here, and he's walking around, and he's calm and he's confident, I start feeling him loosen up and he's breathing well, then I'm going to go back and start working on some of my circles, and I'm going to start bending him around and getting those, working on my bending exercise, some shoulder control, and we'll start working on some of my turns and getting my steering back there. But I never want to really drill on this. And tonight, you can see here, this is the day before the show, I'm not going to actually work on my pattern because I don't want to drill anything really hard in this arena. I want to leave things pretty calm when I go out. I want him to know he needs to listen to me in here, but I'm just going to go flying around here drilling on something that makes him really worried about this arena. So another big thing that I wanted to bring up is that I don't drill very hard in the arenas that I show in. Again, I want the horse to learn to listen to me, but I don't want to go after him so hard that every time he comes up to the pen, he's like, oh crap, not this pen again. Okay, and then when I do get off, I want to get off kind of on the far end, and I just want to hang out and let my horse relax for a minute before leaving the pen. So different people might have a different strategy about this, but I found it works really well. And as soon as I feel him start to tune in, he gets relaxed, he's coming back to me, then we're going to call it a day there. I really, really like how he's adapting to this environment. It's just, I see a ton of promising progress, and I'm really excited to go show him tomorrow. All right, so we're coming up on Saturday here, and we get off here early in the morning to try and get out here in the arena. I hoped to get out here alone before a lot of people were out here, and I got out here at about 5, and there were already some people in here. Obviously, it's a smaller show, so I was kind of expecting that 5 would still be pretty empty, but like I said, I already have a few riders in here, so I don't have the advantage of bringing my horse in here alone, but we're going to work with what we have. Today, I am going to work on the pattern just a little bit and not put it all together, but I want to work on side passing the pole because I do have that in there, making sure that he's comfortable trotting up to it and side passing over it. And then another thing that I really want to work on is my diagonal and simple change, because that's a component that I know that he's going to struggle with a little bit. So when I start to work on a pattern on the first show, I don't really just run the whole pattern together. Sometimes I will, I might do it a couple times, but I don't really focus on that. What I want to do is break down the components and kind of put them back together as I go in the show pen. So again, I picked what I would consider trouble spots or things that I know may be at my horse's weak point, and we're going to work on those a little bit, make sure it's really cleaned up and everything's going well. If I feel a horse dropping his shoulder at one spot like I do when I ask him to pick up the left lead after a simple change, then I'm going to work on really getting that shoulder picked up and making sure he's comfortable and confident with that. But I don't just drill the whole pattern over and over and over. Focus on your trouble points and then put it together at the end. He's a little sticky on the departures. He's wanting to raise up quite a bit, and I want him to stay a little bit more quiet and long and elevated into the departure because we're going to need these to be really clean. Again, I'm doing a simple change instead of a flying change. His lead changes are coming along pretty well, but it's just kind of like switching back to the snaffle. I want to make this the best experience for him possible, so I'm not going to try to force a flying change to happen in the pen. We're going to go back to a simple, and in that simple change, he has to be able to pick up that left lead really cleanly after he breaks to a walk or a trot. It needs to be just like that, you split second difference, like half a stride. You want to break from the right lead, calmly pick up the left lead. And what he's wanting to do here is really to kind of drop that left shoulder into there. And then when I really push him through it, he wants to raise up. So we're dealing with two things. So I'm going to get that shoulder cleared up, really get him pushing to the right and clearing the shoulder, and then picking up that left lead quietly. So I have this horse riding around in a shank bit at home. He's doing really well in a correction and rides around pretty well one-handed, but because this is his first show, I'm going to put him back in a snaffle. I don't love the way that he rides in a snaffle. He tends to want to really push on the bit, and although I don't have so much of a problem with the horse pushing on the bit and being on the bit, what I do have a problem with is when they do it so much that they really get heavy on the front end. Okay, we need to keep those shoulders elevated, so I switched this horse to a correction bit pretty early to start getting those shoulders a little bit more elevated and make him keep a little bit more accountability on his own, so I didn't constantly have to pick him up. And he's done really, really well with that. However, like I said, I'm putting him back in the snaffle because I want to ride him two-handed today, just to give him a little bit more of a safety net. I really want to be able to hold his hand through the pattern and make sure that I don't just kind of leave him hanging, or there's no spots where he second guesses himself, because there's a lot more going on here than you're going to have at home, and that is hopefully going to help us through this pattern. Even if he does get a little fronty, a little heavy, it's going to help with those subtle cues to just make sure this first show is a success, because it's not about winning, it's about making sure your horse has the best experience possible in the show pen. So you can even see him here where I'm riding him in a snaffle and he's just kind of a little pushy on that bit, and I'm having to pick him up and work with him a little bit, but that's just part of the process, and I'm going to kind of leave that alone, and we're going to see how he shows tonight. All right, so we got our morning warm-up behind us. It is now afternoon. We're coming up on our show time. Now, in this warm-up later in the day, I'm really wanting to back off and make sure that my training time is very effective, okay? Because as I talked about before, I'm running out of horse a little bit, and I don't want this horse so gassed and so tired and so sick of this environment that he just kind of gives up and quits on me. What happens with a horse like this is not that he'll just quit in the show pen, he doesn't get sold up, but they just kind of start getting dull on their cues. So sometimes the more you work on it, and I'm like a practiceaholic. I love to practice things until they're perfect, and that's been a big thing for me as a horse trainer, is learning not to do that and just to trust your feel and trust your program and read the horse and where he's at, and not to have to practice till it's perfect, because it's not going to be. You have to know when to set it up, when to leave it alone, and say, this is where my horse is at, this is good for him, and this is going to be the most productive for us once we get into the show pen. Again, I don't want to pick on too much here. We can't expect perfection at his first show, but those are some of the things that I'm working on and targeting right before we go show.
One eternity later.
Well, guys, we finished showing it around midnight last night, and I wasn't about to get my camera out and film an update, but we need to talk. That was the worst first show I've ever had in my life. I mean, it couldn't have gone worse. I guess I could have fallen off, but you get the point, okay? So let's talk about it. So for the ranch, they decided to move the judges inside the arena along with table and chairs. And when I saw this, I figured that my horse would probably eyeball it as he loped past, but I really wasn't too worried about it overall because of how well he'd warmed up, and he just adapted to so many things in his environment so well, and I just know how he rides at home and how confident he is. So another thing was I had two classes with the same pattern, so I figured even if the first one went a little bit poorly, then I could really pull it together in the second one, and I was wrong. So we go in the pen, and he starts walking in there with his nice ranch walk, and as soon as he looks across there and sees those judges, he pulls one of those, he stops himself and looks up there. And I really couldn't get him to go forward. And like I talked about earlier, going forward is one of my non-negotiables. It's very important that your horse can move its feet forward when you tell him to, because that can get you unlocked from a lot of very sticky situations, and also prevents horses from getting in habits like rearing or backing up or flying backwards and going over. Situations like that can be avoided if your horse knows how to move his feet forward when you tell him to. So I had to get after him pretty hard for that. Things got kind of messy. I did get him down to the end of the arena, but as soon as that happened, I knew, we're abandoning pattern at this point. He's so worried about this table and the judges over there that my main goal is to get him down to the end of the arena and hopefully walk past that and maybe have a better run on my second time around. It was so bad though that when I got down there, he was dancing around. His head was straight up in the air. His tail was up there. And I made a few small circles, and things really weren't getting better. So I decided to just wait till I got a couple yeses. His feet were moving forward when I told him to. And I stepped off, and I walked him past the judge's table. And I apologized, but they were very nice about it and very understanding. And I told them I was going to be back for another class because, I had paid for that AUHA class. And I figured with as bad as things went, as humiliating as it is, I knew my horse needed the exposure in the second class. So I took him out of the pen. I didn't school him hard. I didn't make a lot of heavy corrections. I just walked him around quietly, because at that point the problem was my horse was worried. He wasn't relaxed. He wasn't mentally present. So going on him and beating him up for that per se, and kind of bumping him around, kicking him around, wouldn't have done any good. So I just got him quiet and relaxed, and we waited around for our next class. I took him back in there, and again, we run into the same problem where he didn't want to go forward. Now this time he did go forward better when I insisted, and we got around the pin a little bit better. I gave him moments to pause, to reflect, to kind of soak it in, just settle, and try to put his mind back on the job where I could. So the important thing for me when a horse starts getting really, really worried about something is to give them a simple task that they understand how to do very, very well, because it builds their confidence back up in what they're doing, and it takes their mind off the intimidating situation that they're dealing with at hand. So here, that's why you saw me do the side pass in both patterns. Wasn't because I thought I was going to earn any credit for doing a side pass. It was because I knew this is one thing that the horse would focus on that would get his mind off, possibly, help to get his mind off of what he was focusing on over here. And same with the circles. A lot of times I'll take a horse back into a bending exercise and just soften up that rib cage and start getting their head down to get their withers and their top line soft. And then we'll work on what they're worried about again, but I never just make them face up and just kick and ride and go explore what they're scared of, because that can really make them realize that their fears were valid and justified, and you don't want to add to their anxiety. Anyway, at this point, I was able to ride past the judge's table, and once he saw that it wasn't intimidating, he just walked right on past it, and we walked out of the pen. No problems at all, and I can almost guarantee you that if I'd had a third run, we'd have been 90% there, because like I talked about earlier in this video, what I really, really like about this horse is that once he sees something once or twice, he has a tendency to really adapt to it and just kind of take it in and be like, okay, that was fine, that's that, I lived, and then he moves on from it, and that's really special to me. So we're striving for progress here, not perfection, and I think we made that progress. Obviously, that's not how we wanted it to go. That's the last thing I really ever expected to happen, but it is what happens. And I went outside the pen, and I really contemplated scrapping this whole video, but I realized this is the stuff that people need to see to realize this is the reality of showing. This is just what can happen to anyone. It happens to even the trainers. You don't know as well as you might think you know your horse. You just don't know what could show up in that environment. And also you might be pleasantly surprised. There's been times I've taken horses out that I really thought were a little bit more flaky and a little more worried, and they showed up and just did a phenomenal job their first time in the pen. So you really don't know either way, but it's part of the process that needs to happen if you want to successfully show your horse. So be willing to give your horse several chances to adapt to it. It's just so much change for a young horse, to be hauled and see a new place and see all the things going on around and be surrounded with so many strange horses. That's a big job for a horse. So I want you to take that into consideration too. Just understand that this is a long process, and some horses adapt to it more quickly than others. So to answer the question posed at the beginning of this video, is my horse broke enough to show? Probably not, but that's why we're here. We're here to get better. If nothing else, I hope this video gives you the encouragement to get out there on your horse and start. I hope it doesn't have the opposite effect on you. I hope you don't see how badly it went for me and decide, you know what, I am never doing that to myself. But just know it happens to all of us, and everyone who's been out there will understand the pain. It's not always going to make the perfect scene. It's not going to always make the perfect YouTube video. It's not going to go the way we envisioned it would go all the time, but you got to go try. So start somewhere, strive for perfection, accept progress, and trust the process. Good luck, guys, and I hope to see you at a show soon.